We're moving into Philippians, and I just discovered a very interesting little tidbit that I thought I would share with you from Philippians. In Philippians chapter 2, at the end of the chapter, verses 19 through 30, Paul talks about two deacons, two servants that that are going to come to the Philippians congregation and help them out. Now, in the Philippians level, remember we're going to finish up developing righteousness, and we are going to become a servant. And of course, being a servant is not something that you do for a while till you graduate and become an apostle. Being a servant is a foundational part of being an apostle. We have to serve other people. And so in verse 19, but I trust in the Lord Yeshua to send Timothy to you shortly, that I also may be encouraged when I know your state. And he goes on and talks about Timothy a little bit. He says, I trust in the Lord Yeshua to send Timothy. That phrase is an odd phrase that people don't use very much or at all. But what he means is that he has been praying for the congregation, and he has gotten some feedback that he's supposed to send Timothy, and he's trusting in that feedback that will be accomplished. Okay, and then down in verse 25, he starts in on the second guy. Yet I considered it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker, and fellow soldier, but your messenger and the one who ministered to my need. So the word minister is an old English word for serving. In other words, he was doing a servant job for Paul. So these are two examples of servants. So that is a big topic here in Philippians, this idea of becoming a servant. And of course, what that means is that you're going to be doing servant assignments, meaning that you're going to have some sort of an assignment that you're going to have to pray about. You're going to want to get the congregation in on it to pray about it. And you're going to want to listen to the Holy Spirit during the thing and evaluate afterwards. And how do we evaluate? The spiritual tests that are in the books here in Paul's letters. In other words, is the Spirit operating? Is he, in you? That's the big thing that you want to look for to see if you have done it correctly or not. Okay. Now, the next thing, this particular section corresponds to Psalm 67. So let's turn there next. Psalm 67 to the chief musician, and that is the word netzach, which means to look at it from a higher sense. And that's what we're doing. We're going to see something that is going to be something beyond what we already understand. On stringed instruments, a psalm, a song. God be gracious to us and bless us and cause his face to shine upon us, Selah. Selah means Stop, listen to the music, meditate on what was just said. What was just said? Cause his face to shine upon us. Okay? What does that mean? Well, that's what I want to get into. Continuing on in Psalm 67, that your way or path may be known on the earth, your salvation among all the Gentiles. So, as a servant, we are going to be sharing the gospel, meaning the path. We're going to make that known in the earth by going around and sharing that information. Let the peoples thank you, O God. Let all the peoples thank you. Oh, let the people be glad and sing for joy, for you shall judge the people from straightness and govern the people or guide the peoples on the earth. Selah. So this section is talking about how the path is going to be furthered among those who do not know yet. Verse 5, let the peoples thank you, O God, let all the peoples thank you. Then the earth shall yield her increase. God, our God, shall bless us. God shall bless us, and all the ends of the earth shall fear him. Now, you can translate this word earth as the land, referring to the land of Israel, and that's the way it's used most of the time in the Bible. And if we think about these two verses in that way, it really changes the meaning. Then the land of Israel shall yield her increase, and God, our own God, shall bless us, meaning that we're in the land. And that's what's going to happen when the millennium starts. We're going to be in the land. We will have done the invasion. There will be, all of this stuff will have happened, but the goal of the gospel is for us to get back to the land and have all this stuff happen in the land. And God shall bless us, i.e. in the land, and all the ends of the land shall fear him. Meaning that everybody in Israel are going to be on board with the path and living righteously. Okay, so that is Psalm 67, and it brings up this idea of cause his face to shine upon us. In other words, it's connecting this idea of God shining his face on us to the idea of becoming a deacon or a servant. Okay? Now that's kind of interesting because this reminded me of Acts 6. Let's turn to Acts 6. Down at the end of the chapter, now in Acts 6, we have Stephen, right? And and at the first part of the chapter, they decide that they're going to pick some people to be servants or deacons in order to distribute food to the widows, take care of that particular deacon assignment, servant assignment. And Stephen is one of those people. And when he goes out to do that, on the way, God starts doing all kinds of miracles. Why? Because Stephen is representing God correctly. Why? Because he is living righteously. Because he's at the Philippians level, right? And it even describes the Philippians level in here. Let's see. Verse 3, therefore, brethren, seek out from among you 7 men of good reputation, full of the Holy Spirit and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. So what's good reputation? Good reputation means that they have a reputation or a name in the Hebrew sense of being righteous. And then it says, full of the Holy Spirit. This is not walking in the Holy Spirit. Walking in the Holy Spirit is something that happens at the beginning of the path. But when you are consistently walking in the Holy Spirit, this is called being full of the Holy Spirit. Okay? So he's walking consistently in the Holy Spirit, and he has wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to apply that Holy Spirit guidance and the understanding of the Torah to life. Okay? So he's got righteousness, he's got the Holy Spirit consistently, and he is applying it correctly. Okay? And this is all the things that we learn by the time we finish the Philippians level. And Stephen is one of these guys. And then, after all these miracles happen, of course, all the religious guys get upset about this because they're taking their people away from them, right? They don't have the miracles, but God is using these miracles in order to bring people into the congregation. And so they, verse 12, and they stirred up the people, the elders, and the scribes, and they came upon him, seized him, and brought him to the council. They also took up false witnesses who said, this man does not cease to speak blasphemous words against the holy place and the Torah. And this is exactly what Judaism is going to accuse us of, because we follow Jesus, right? If you follow Jesus, then that means everything you say is blasphemous and everything you say is against the Torah. We don't follow the Talmud. Oh, that's against the Torah because the Talmud is the Torah, right? So all of these things is exactly what is going to happen to us from the Judaism guys. They're going to not be happy with the things that we are doing as a servant, as a deacon. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs which Moses delivered to us. Now, what is the customs that Moses delivered to us? They're talking about the oral law, which is the Talmud, okay? And so that's exactly what he's doing. He is challenging the customs of men, as he called them, but to them, the oral Torah is the same as the written Torah. To their understanding, this is rejecting Moses, which is a big problem in the Torah itself. Of course, we're not doing that. We are following the Torah, and our customs, I believe, and Yeshua believed, are better customs than the Talmud. They help us to do the Torah better. And but from their viewpoint, he's here to destroy this and to destroy this place. In other words, what they're saying is that Yeshua is going to do away with the physical temple, which is exactly what many of his so-called followers in Christianity teach. They teach we don't have to do the sacrifices anymore. And so this is what they believe that these people are teaching. We do not teach that. Yeshua did not teach that. Yeshua said, do every little command in the Torah. But they don't take it that way. But verse 15 is the interesting one here. And all who sat in the council, looking steadfastly at him, Stephen, saw his face as the face of an angel. There was something odd about his face, something heavenly. What was that? Where did that come from? What's going on with that? Okay. All right. Well, to answer that, let's jump over to Exodus 34. Exodus 34, verses 29 through 35. Okay. 29. Exodus 34:29. Now it was so when Moshe came down from Mount Sinai, and the 2 tablets of the testimony were in Moshe's hands, when he came down from the mountain, that Moshe did not know that the skin of his face shone while he talked with them. So when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. Now, some translations say that his face had horns, and indeed in the Hebrew, this word is related to horns. But what's talking about is that there's rays of light coming out of his face. Okay, and they were afraid to come near him. Then Moshe called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned to him, and Moshe talked with them. Afterward, all the sons of Israel came near, and he gave them as commandments all that Yahweh had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moshe had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moshe went in before Yahweh to speak with him, he would take the veil off until he came out, and he would come out and speak to the sons of Israel whenever he had been commanded. And whenever the sons of Israel saw the face of Moshe, that the skin of Moshe's face shone, then Moshe would put the veil on his face again, and he went in to speak with him. So, what's going on here? Well, let's turn back to chapter 33. Chapter 33, verse 11 is kind of interesting. So the Lord spoke to Moshe face to face, as a man speaks to his friend, and he would return to the camp. But his servant, his deacon, Yehoshua, the son of Nun, a young man, did not depart from the tabernacle. This guy is making God important. Yehoshua, he saw his face shining, he's seeing the miracles. All of this stuff is making the appropriate alteration to his life, that he's going to press in. He's going to get connected and stay connected. And this is exactly what Stephen figured out. And he pressed in. When he pressed in, his face started shining, just like Moses did. Okay. Let's go down. Let's read on down in chapter 33. This is what's going on. Then Moshe said to Yahweh, "See, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray, if I have found grace in your sight, show me now your way or your path, that I may know, and that I may know you, and that I may find grace in your sight, and consider that this nation is your people." So the path is talking about the path of Yeshua, obviously, but it's also referring to the Holy Spirit guiding you specifically with things that you're supposed to be doing. You have to have both of those. And he said, "My face will go with you, and I will give you rest." In the New King James, it says "my presence," but the word in the Hebrew his face. My face will go with you, and I will give you rest. So the presence of God is, we're talking about the Holy Spirit, and we're talking about his face. Okay? Then he said to him, if your face does not go up with us, do not bring us up from here. For how then will it be known that your people and I have found grace in your sight, except you go up with us? So we shall be distinct or separate, your people and I, from all the people who are upon the face of the ground. So how do we distinguish ourselves from everybody else? It's the face of God. What is the face? It's talking about the fact that we show what God is. We do that through our actions. Our actions line up with Torah, and they line up with the guidance of the Holy Spirit by fully walking in him, walking consistently in him. So Yahuwah said to Moshe, I will also do this thing that you have spoken, for you have found grace in my sight, and I know you by name. Name is called his reputation. In other words, Moshe is living righteously. And he said, please show me your glory. Then he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim the name of Yahuwah before you. I will be gracious to you, I will be gracious, and I will embrace you, literally. I will embrace on whom I will embrace. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that God's real face is the invisible God. If you see that, then you get merged into God. Okay? You're no longer alive in the sense of moving around. Okay? In the presence of God, you are now static in the presence of God. In other words, you're part of God. So this is the real God. Okay? When he talks about his face in that sense. In that sense, we can't see it. Okay? But we can see a representation of it. What's that representation? Yeshua is that representation, and we can see that. And we can see his reputation in the Torah, okay, and also in the guidance of the Holy Spirit. All of those things is his representation. And Yahuwah said, here is a place by me, and you shall stand on the rock. But it shall be when my glory passes by that I will put you in the cleft of the rock and will cover you with my hand while I pass by. Then I will turn away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. So he is seeing Yeshua in all of his glory. He is seeing the Torah in all of his glory. He's understanding the Torah. Okay, this is what's going on. He's getting he's getting merged into the Holy Spirit so that he can get guidance moment by moment. This is the presence of God. Okay, and it's called the face of God. And this is why his face was shining, because his face was merged with the spirit of Yeshua and the spirit of Torah. And this spirit was shining through him in his actions, in his words, and physically through his aura. Okay? So this is what, and now, was Moses a deacon or was he an apostle? Well, I would call him an apostle, right? He's in charge of the whole nation. He's got to be on the top of the pyramid, right? So, so I would call him an apostle. But something very interesting is that That's not the title that's used in the Torah for him. You know what the title is that's used for him in the Torah? Well, let's go to Exodus 14:31 and see what Moses' title is. Exodus 14:31. Exodus 14:31. Thus Israel saw the great work which the Lord had done in Egypt, so that the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. So this is right after the Red Sea. They saw the Red Sea incident. They saw the 10 plagues, and they were fearing the Lord. And they believed the Lord. They're believing Yahuwah, who did all this stuff, but they're also believing something else. And his servant, his deacon, Moshe. This is what the Exodus did, is it not only revealed God, but it also revealed that Moshe was a special servant of God, in that he was the guy who was going to write the Torah. Okay, and in the Bible, the term Moshe is sometimes used synonymously with Torah. Why? Because he wrote the Torah. Why? Because he was the guy who was associated with all these miracles. Every one of these miracles, Moshe is the guy who announced that they were going to happen. Moshe is the guy who announced that they were going to stop. Moshe is the guy that is the spokesman of God during all these miracles of the Exodus. And therefore, if you believe that all these events came from God, you also have to believe that Moshe is God's spokesman. And then you have to believe the Torah, okay, which is the whole point. Why is the Torah our authority? It's our authority because of the Exodus. The Exodus tells us this, okay? And so the title of Moshe as the one who represents God in writing the Torah, his title is the servant of God. And he was certainly a servant. He got instructions from God, carried them out. Get an instruction, do it. Get an instruction and do it. That's what a servant does, okay? And he gave up his whole life to do that, right? He didn't retire on the Riviera. He gave up his entire life to serve God, and that's what apostles do. That's what deacons do also, okay? So, let's turn to Numbers 12:7. See this title again. Numbers 12, verse 7. And the verse 7 says, "Not so with my servant Moshe. He is faithful in all my house." Meaning every one of his instructions that he gets, he does it. Gets it, does it. Gets it, does it. And that's why, remember, he was supposed to speak to the rock. The first time they're out of water, and God says, "I want you to hit the rock with your rod." And so he does that. That's good. The second time, he says, "Speak to the rock." And Moshe is so angry with these people because they just don't get it. They're seeing miracle after miracle after miracle, and they don't believe. Okay? And he's so angry that he hits the rock. And God punishes him severely. Says, "You can't go into the land because of that." Why was Moshe punished so severely? Because Moshe represents God. When we say the word Moshe, we are using it synonymously with the Torah. And the Torah has no mistakes in it. Okay? And so when Moshe does a sin, that's not representing Torah correctly. So he's got a special job as the writer of the Torah, but then that puts on him special responsibility to do everything right, which he missed once. Okay? And so that severe punishment is to tell us that that is not part of the Torah. The Torah does not represent any sort of bobbling in sin whatsoever. Okay? So, but notice that he says that he's faithful in all my house, meaning that he's doing everything that he's supposed to be doing. And that is passing the servant test. If you go through the servant test, you're listening to God, you do everything that he instructs you to do, that's the test. That's the spiritual test of Philippians. And that is verified by the operation of the spiritual gifts. Okay, if you're operating in the supernatural gifts, then that tells you that you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. And then at the Philippians level, in addition to that, you have to do all the instructions of each of the servant assignments. So that tells you that you're walking in the Spirit fully, okay? And it tells you that you're up to the level that you're supposed to be at that time. Okay, so we see Moses. Now let's go to number 6. Number 6 is the blessing that Aaron is supposed to give, that the high priest is supposed to give. And Yahuwah this is verse 22, number 6, 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the way you will bless the sons of Israel. Say to them, Yahuwah bless you and guard you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahuwah lift up his face upon you and give you peace, so they shall put my name on the sons of Israel, and I will bless them. So, putting God's reputation on the people, that means that they live righteously. They speak the Torah, okay? They speak whatever the Spirit is telling them to speak. Then they are doing, they have the name, okay? And when they do that, God's face shines on them. People will recognize that you are representing God when you are doing the things that you're supposed to be doing as a servant of God. I think this is pretty neat. I think it is kind of pulling together all of the things that we've been talking about as we're approaching the Philippians level. That we're supposed to be living righteously. We're supposed to be building our righteousness, learning more Torah, learning to walk in the Spirit more consistently. All of that stuff is the name of God. It is his reputation, and it shines forth God through us. Boy, I just thought of another place that's kind of interesting in this line. Let's go to Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount. This is Matthew chapter 5. And let's go down to verse 14, Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Your Father in heaven is that light that is shining through you. Okay? And the point that he's making about not putting it under a basket is the fact that the whole point of learning to live righteously is so that you can be an apostle and spread that light all around you. Okay? You don't do this just for yourself. You have to be a servant and shine it into other people. Okay. Well, a little meditation probably is in order at this point.